Strategy starts with questions. This is the tentative title of a book that I'm writing. Let me start with a few words about this book. First, this book is a strategy playbook, a playbook for succeeding in business, a playbook that, in addition to examining the how-tos of business, also explores the why-tos, what-tos, when-tos, and who-tos of business. Second, the playbook is revealed through stories, the stories of people, companies, circumstances, and choices. Some stories are personal, some stories are untold, and some are undertold. Third, while many stories end well, others involve setbacks, disappointments, and failures. Fourth, every story offers valuable lessons. Lessons that explore how mindset and motivations interact with circumstances to influence the choices that people make. My aim is to help you develop your playbook, the heuristics, policies, and rules that will help you make sense and act in pivotal moments. George Cantor, the Russian mathematician who played a central role in developing set theory, is quoted as saying, "In mathematics, the art of proposing a question must be held of higher value than solving it. So it is in business. The art of strategy starts with asking the right questions. In business and life, we are never done until it's all over." What I have learned as a student, teacher, and practitioner of strategy is that there are 5 pivotal dimensions of questions that every entrepreneur, CEO, and business person must ask and answer. The questions include sense-making questions, where we try to comprehend what is happening around us. Identity questions, where we must decide who we are and what we stand for. Markets questions, where we determine what businesses we are going to be in. Advantage questions, where we decide how we will acquire the knowledge and skills that will give us an edge. Decisions questions, where we decide what to do and how to do it. Let me start with the sense-making questions. The questions that help us understand what's going on. The problem is this: what should we pay attention to? How are we to tell what is the signal and what is the noise? What we want to be able to tell is this: what are the opportunities for us? And what are the obstacles that we face? And what will it take to profit from the former and overcome the latter? Sense-making is an underappreciated skill. It is the critical skill that separates the best from everyone else. Sense-making is an art. It cannot be reduced to formulas, and it requires judgment. Sense-making is the skill to hold many conflicting ideas in your head at the same time. It requires an ability to connect the dots. Sense-making requires the temperament to change your mind and to admit that you are wrong. It is the skill that produces outsized rewards. Here are 5 stories that I will recount on sense-making. My first story, a conversation between Bill Gates and Steve Jobs in which they reveal their methods for decoding the future of the smartphone. My second story, how Jay Shekhawat, a friend of mine, started a software company, Fieldglass, that became Chicago's first billion-dollar technology exit. My third story, why the co-CEOs of the Canadian company that introduced the smartphone, Research in Motion, missed the iPhone moment. My fourth story, how Anant Narayanan recognized the opportunity to build a DTC health and beauty brand in India, Mensa Brands. My fifth story, why Soumya and her co-founders at Katie sensed that a greenhouse in a box product could revolutionize Indian farming. The next sets of questions I examine are the identity questions. Who are you? Why do you exist? And what will you do and not do? Your story of who you are must find validation from important stakeholders. Identity, when it works, provides affirmation that your company deserves to exist. The value of a strong identity is that it makes it easier to attract the right employees, the right customers, the right investors, and the right business partners. Shaping identity requires consideration of internal questions, such as your purpose, your competencies, and your culture, as well as external considerations, such as your brand and your positioning. Among the stories that I will tell on identity, here are 5. Story 1, how Adam Neumann tried several identities for his company WeWork, none of which struck a chord with important stakeholders. Story 2, why one of America's iconic electronics retailers, Radio Shack, struggled to adapt its identity to shifting customers and tastes. Story 3, what motivated Nicole Doucette, a Mexican-American immigrant, to start the aluminum bottled water company, Open Water? Story 4, the events that shaped the choices that Ted Wright made in building a boutique word-of-mouth marketing agency, Fizz. And story 5, how Lin Jiang is building a China-inspired oatmeal brand, Yishi Foods. Next, I examine the markets questions. What businesses are we in and should we be in? What is our product? How will we create a demand for the product? Who will buy the product and why? And how will we produce and deliver our product? Success in markets is where the rubber hits the road. For firms must create economic value as well as capture a portion of it. Without value creation, there is no reason to exist. And without value capture, survival is threatened. Creating and managing markets is the principal task of every company. It is a 24/7 imperative. Companies create and manage many markets, including product markets, labor markets, capital markets, business service markets, and stakeholder markets. Among the many stories that I will tell on markets, here are 4. My first story, how 2 young entrepreneurs, Arnav Dalmia and Shivani Jain, discovered the right customer on their way to building a $100 million plus wellness company, QB. My second story, how the IPL, the Indian Premier League, has become one of the world's most valuable sports leagues. My third story, how an off-price retailer, Burlington, is building a fast-growing and profitable business serving America's lower middle-income consumer. Story 4, how and why an ed-tech company that I worked for in the late 90s and early 2000s, Unext, went from 0 to 500 million in value before fading away. Next, the advantage questions. Why will we create and capture economic value? That is, what is the source of our advantage? Is it what we know? Is it how we do it? Or is it who we know? How can we ensure that our source of advantage is difficult for others to imitate and difficult for others to dilute? Advantage is important because it clarifies what it takes to win the prize, to create and capture economic value. And it creates awareness of how advantage must be defended. Here are 5 stories I tell on advantage. Story 1, the choices that Jensen Huang made that have enabled NVIDIA to become the leading specialty chip design company in the world. My second story, what makes Pep Guardiola, head coach of Manchester City, special? Story 3, how the Taj Hotels Group remains one of the world's leaders in luxury hotels. Story 4, how JP Gallagher has made Endeavor Health one of the nation's highest performing healthcare providers. And story 5, how my sister, Malavika Shivakumar, and her co-founders started and built a high-end embroidery, Vastrakala, in Madras, India. Finally, all roads lead to decisions questions. Strategy is not merely a cognitive activity. It is less chess and more mountain climbing. Cognitive activity must be complemented by decisions, by actions. Indeed, if golf were merely a cognitive activity, many of us would be pros. Strategy is a collection of thoughts as well as actions, cohesive thoughts and coordinated actions. How you do it is as important as what you do. Among the stories I tell on decisions, here are three. My first story, what Dennis Choukasian learned about decision making during crisis periods as the chairman and CEO of CNA Insurance. Story two, what Jay Shekhawat did and did not do during down rounds and difficult periods as CEO of a startup, Fieldglass, that was sold to SAP for $1 billion. Story three, the critical decisions that Luis Miranda had to make as CEO of IDFC Private Equity, India's first infrastructure-focused private equity fund. I close with 10 strategy truths. Strategy is a practical endeavor. The intent is to improve one's relative position. Life is not just onwards and upwards. There are lots of sideways and downward movements too. Pleasure and purpose count as much as profit. Strategy is contingent. It depends on many things. What was best yesterday may not be so today. Strategy requires judgment. When to say yes, when to say no, when to buy, when to sell, when to persist, and when to quit. There are a few ways to get strategy right and many ways to get it wrong. Strategy requires a clear and open mind. Hold your beliefs and convictions lightly. Strategy cannot be separated from the strategist. The strategist's temperament and character counts as much as intelligence. The wisdom of the strategist must also be assessed by the things that did not happen. Strategy requires risk-taking, and sometimes the greatest risk is in not taking chances. Let me close by reiterating what you will get by watching my videos and reading my book. My book is a playbook for strategy, a playbook for succeeding in business. It is more than just a how-to book. It is a why to, what to, when to, and who to book on business. Importantly, this playbook is conveyed in the way that humans best absorb ideas, stories of people, companies, circumstances, and choices.